JJ, the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Wanted to address the PUA, EIDL, and the PPP. And still getting a lot of questions on this. And so try and do a quick overview for you. The one thing I want you to note is that what is now not part of the conversation is the EIDG. That was the grant that was being given out. It was $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. And it was given out while you were waiting to see if the SBA was going to give you the economic injury disaster loan. So on Saturday, the SBA came out and said they've fully have given out everything that they were allocated by Congress. So there is no more to give out for those that are now applying for EIDL. It did indicate that for those that have applied, they are still under the consideration that they may be able to get the grant. But the reason it's not part of the conversation is that for those that are having the questions, typically I'm getting them from those that haven't gotten the EIDL or the PPP or the PUA or some combination of one of them. So the first thing I want you to know is that yes, you can get all three. So the way to look at this though is just how do they interact and what is the timing of it? So when you're first looking at the EIDL, the thing I just want you to know is that EIDL, the EIDG, does not affect your PUA. That's the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. It doesn't affect your unemployment benefits. And the reason for that is that even if you already got the EIDG, that's the grant, well, that is not income, it's just a grant. It's just given to you. You don't have to pay it back. And then the EIDL, the L is for loan. You have to pay it back. There's no way it becomes forgiven, and that's what you get from directly from the SBA. So that's why it doesn't have effect on your PUA. Now, there was a lot of discussion in the beginning about the interacting of EIDL and PPP. And in some ways, I think it's really now an irrelevant consideration for the most part because you're getting this much PPP typically, and then you're getting this much EIDL or this much EIDL. But the fact of the matter is that now that we have 24 weeks to use up the PPP, and there is no timeline on the EIDL, really what I'm telling my clients is I don't think there's really any worry, concern about using EIDL for what you would be using PPP for. It all goes in one pot. You either have the payroll or you don't, which you should if you have the PPP. So in terms of the EIDL and that interaction, the EIDG and that interaction in terms of actually spending the dollars, just don't think you need to worry about it because it's all going to work itself out. The only way that I would say if you are overly concerned about it is you can have a separate account for PPP, a separate account for EIDL, and have it separated out from your operating funds and use it accordingly for what those purposes are. And we know that the purpose of PPP is simply payroll costs, which includes the payroll to employees, including the owners. We know that that's only up to $100,000 on an annual basis. There's some tweaks to that. And then we do know that the PPP can be used for rent and utilities and then interest on any business loans. And then the only employer payroll taxes that are included in the PPP is the state unemployment tax. So with the PPP, those are the things that it's limited to. So you either have those or you don't. Well, you had them because that's how you got your PPP, meaning you had the payroll. You may not have rent and utilities or interest, but now under the 24-week option, well, you're going to still end up in the same position that you were when you went to get the PPP, which is you needed money for payroll. You got 24 weeks to use it for payroll. You should achieve full forgiveness, assuming you don't have a reduction in your FTEs or a reduction in salaries to each of your employees. And I do have some videos that walk through that calculation on a whiteboard. But what we're talking about right here is the interaction. So with the EIDL as well as the EIDG, in the event that you already got that, you're only able to use it for ongoing business expenses. So ongoing as in you're routinely buying or spending money on this for business purposes for your business. So assets and refinancing loans and paying yourself back, those aren't operating, those aren't ongoing expenses. I get asked a lot, well, I have to buy a car to be able to get to work, or I have to have a car because I'm a driver. Well, it's an asset. It's not about what do I need to be able to conduct business. It's what do you need to conduct business that's an ongoing expense. So that's what the EIDL is limited to. So you take your EIDL, no effect to the PUA. You take your PPP, well, how does that affect PUA? Well, that really depends on your state. And for the real answer, you need to inquire of your unemployment office in your state, because each state is interpreting PPP differently. And honestly, most states aren't considering PPP at all. So we can come up with our own analogies, our own theories, and go with that. However, it's going to be the state that will let you know if there's any effect. And so how are you going to know that? Well, if you need the PUA, meaning you don't have money coming in, well, then go apply. If there is an instance where the PPP is going to affect your PUA, it's going to ask you about it. And then whatever it asks, you'll give your answer. Now, when it says what income, well, in my opinion, PPP, well, it's a loan. And if it's not a loan, it becomes a grant and it's forgivable. But the CARES Act indicates that it's not income. Now, there might be a state that wants to know if you're getting any other assistance to yourself related to payroll. Okay, well, that makes sense that you would then address that with your state. So trying to determine for yourself if your state is silent, your state's not inquiring of PPP, or your state is defining, did you receive any benefits? Meaning doesn't say compensation. Well, then I would consider PPP a benefit. I do think the spirit of PPP was not to be taken at the same time as PUA. What does that mean? Well, if I'm an owner employee, like I pay myself wages and I got PPP, if I were to collect PUA, then I would need to wait 8 weeks, in my opinion, before I would collect PUA. Now, I could get PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, up until the point that I got PPP, but the PPP, the intent of it, what was laid out in the CARES Act, was to cover payroll for 8 weeks, right? For 2 months. Now, when you're looking at the self-employed, I think it would be the same set of circumstances. It would be the PPP that you received. It's supposed to cover you for 8 weeks. Now, I know with a lot of self-employed, they indicate that there's no way that pays me enough for the 8 weeks. Well, I do know in one of the states, they have you take your PPP, divide it by 8, and then for those 8 weeks, you indicate those are the benefits that you got. But that's only in a couple of states that are very specific about it. So the thing I would challenge you on is that if you're still hem-hawing around on whether or not you can get PUA because you got PPP, then just do this. You got PPP, you wait 8 weeks, and you get PUA. I think you're safe in that regard. I think you can get PPP and PUA, just not at the same time. And then if you're doing the 24-week option, whether you're an owner employee or you're self-employed, the 24-week option is how long you have to use up now what you've been given for the PPP. I don't interpret and I don't see anywhere where that means that your PPP is to last you 24 weeks. In fact, I just don't think that's the case at all. You can still use the eight-week option, which you would never want to do, especially as a self-employed. I see no benefits. I can't come up with a scenario where you would want to elect the 8-week period in your PPP forgiveness. So what am I saying, right? That was a lot of words right there. What I'm saying is this. If you got PPP, then there's an 8-week period. You did get benefits. You'll need to then figure out when applying for PUA how you're reflecting those benefits. If you were asking me, I would tell you I have no idea what your state wants you to do. I have no clue. Anybody that's telling you an answer other than your state unemployment office doesn't know either, unless they work for that state or they are in the state that you're working at. Maybe an accountant in your state, maybe someone that works with payroll in your state is going to know that answer. So that's where you would want to turn to somebody that works in your state that is knowledgeable about it. Not a neighbor, not a friend. The only way you would get an answer related to how those benefits affect you in your state with PUA is to apply for it and ask somebody in your state. So I would encourage you, don't just keep searching for the answer that you want. Get the answer from the state. But my opinion would be that you would look at those 8 weeks, and there would be those 8 weeks that you're receiving benefits. How much? Well, what's your PPP divided by 8? That's the best I can give you on that one. So when you're talking about the interaction of them all, yes, you can get all of them. It's at the proper time. It's the use of it. You know, when you're self-employed, you can use it for anything because it's just a calculation. I did a video where I walk you through kind of the mindset of what a lot of self-employed people are thinking about how to pay themselves with PPP money. And the long and short of it is, you don't. It doesn't exist. Your definition of payroll cost is not how much you paid out to yourself. That's irrelevant. Seems illogical. Well, the thing I want you to know is that when you do the forgiveness application, you take line 31 of Schedule C, divided by 12 times 2.5. That's your forgiveness. Doesn't matter how you spent it, how you pulled it out. If you wrote checks to yourself, did you pay yourself it out over 8 weeks? None of that matters. Doesn't matter that you paid it all at once. You don't get to really even pick and choose when you get to pay it out. It is what it is in the sense that it's just a calculation for the self-employed. Now, if you're an owner-employee, yeah, you got to pay it out to yourself. You got to run it through payroll and W-2s, but that's an owner-employee of a business. That's not a self-employed. If you own a business that's filing a separate return and you're paying yourself wages, you may think you're self-employed because it seems logical. I'm self-employing myself. But in PPP world and in the tax world, you are not considered self-employed. So at the end of the day, if you need the relief, then get all three. It's just a matter of timing. And what's interesting is I think for those that receive the PPP and they're trying to find the answers on the PUA and they're trying to find the answers, if you just want to play it safe, if that's really the answer that you're looking for, well, you got an 8-week benefit. The safest thing you can do is not take PUA for 8 weeks. But I don't want to tell you that you can't get PUA because in your state, it may be allowed. And more importantly, if you need it, then you should get it. And you shouldn't be trying to get an answer anywhere other than the state unemployment office. All right, hey, I just want to make sure you're getting the relief that you need and you deserve. And so I know it's a time of looking for answers. And so I'm just trying to steer you in the right direction to actually get the right answer. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. If you made it till here and you're not subscribing, I certainly gave you some kind of kernel of value. So I'd like a kernel back. which is hitting subscribe. And hey, don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. All right, hey, have a great day.